Born to Annoy, Book 1, Part 1. A Dawning of Awareness. Narrated by the author, Malc Cowle. Chapter 1. Early Childhood. Alan, I can remember being born. That's nowt to be proud of, Jim. I can remember being conceived. Unlike the farmers of Dentdale, Jim Taylor and Alan Oversby, my memory is obviously deficient. I remember neither event, nor can I claim any particular role in bringing them about. My earliest memory is being called in for tea immediately after rolling down a newly mown green grassy bank. Why I climbed to the top of the bank and then lay stretched out on my side to let gravity take me to the bottom again, I don't know. But, with a little effort, I can still smell the scent of new mown grass in my nostrils, see the alternate flashes of light and dark, the glimpses of blue sky and white early summer clouds like the flickering of an old movie. Above all, I remember experiencing the sheer joy and ecstasy of being completely out of control. I suppose I'd be approaching 4 years of age, because it was a sunny day and I was a July baby. The woman who called me into tea wasn't my mother, but my Auntie Dolly. Later in life I became aware that the bank separated Chester Road in Hazel Grove from the boulevard, a short cul-de-sac bounded by small shops on one side, the grassy slope and the main road on the other, and ending abruptly at a wooden fence preventing access to the embankment of the Manchester to Buxton railway line. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At that point in 1948, the central person in my life was Grandad Cowle, a white-haired, good-humoured, kindly old man who had taken me under his wing when I was about 4 months old. He was the axis around which my life revolved. We, that is Grandad and his 2 unmarried daughters and me, lived together in a neat home, the front of which was a baby linen shop run by Auntie Beattie on the aforesaid boulevard. I was to discover later Grandad had been an inspector of waterworks for Manchester Corporation, with whom he commenced employment as an apprentice, eventually qualifying as a building surveyor and later as a civil engineer. Auntie Dolly, born in 1910, was 8 years younger than Beattie, and my father's twin. She worked as a comptometer operator in the accounts department of Robertson's Jam and Preserve Works at Droylsden, the town where my parents had their home. At that time, although I suppose I must have known I had birth parents, no thought of them ever entered my innocent and uncluttered mind. I also had 2 younger brothers, of whom I had no knowledge. David William was 2 years younger than me, and Christopher Norman 3 years my junior. William was my grandfather's name, and Norman my father's. As far as I was concerned, my family consisted of 2 lovely women and 1 elderly man, and I was more than happy with them, with the small world in which I resided, and my place within it. Those who have known me as an adult will tell you that I have a deep love of the great outdoors, particularly that part of it comprising upland country. Grandad Cowle played no small part in instilling this trait within me. Many is the time he wrapped me up warm, and once gloved, scarfed and hatted, we set out to catch a train from nearby Hazel Grove Station to travel to Disley, to see the red deer in the vast estates of Lyme Park on a crisp, clear winter's day. The spa town of Buxton and its surrounding hills and dales were also part of our itinerary, as was the Goyt Valley, accessed from Whaley Bridge on the same railway line. The Marple to Macclesfield Canal, a short walk from my Lane station, just up the railroad from Hazel Grove, provided my introduction to the world of sticklebacks, water voles, frogs and tadpoles, ducks and drakes. Rain, hail or shine, not a week went by without Grandad suddenly standing, stretching his body and announcing, "I need a walk. How about you, young Malcolm? Are you coming with me?" Off we'd set, me holding his hand tight, running alongside to keep up, and knowing that after our excursion, or even during it, when I was tired out and no longer able to walk, let alone run, he would scoop me up in his strong arms. My arms in turn would snake around his neck, and sooner or later I would wake up, refreshed once more, my cheek still resting against his own. I have no memory of going to any kind of school during my residence in the Grove, although I must have done so for a short period. Years later, when in my teens, Auntie Dolly informed me that after my first day at the local educational establishment, Grandad met me and asked, "Well, my boy, how was school?" Evidently my response was brief and somewhat over-optimistic. "It was all right, but I'm glad it's over." Auntie Beattie also informed me that I'd returned home from the same premises one day, and informed my aged mentor I'd been told off by my teacher for my mode of speech. The teacher was a southerner, and objected to the fact I didn't pronounce the word book as book. Indeed, I pronounced my double O's as the who in coo, whether it be in the word book, luke, took, or kook. As far as I was concerned, young as I was, a buck was a young male deer or a male rabbit, for Grandad had told me so, and Grandad was a great source of knowledge. I also knew that luck was often bad and rarely good. Tuck was something to eat, or the process of stuffing your shirt lap into your trousers. I had no idea what cut was, but it sounded like an extremely naughty swear word to me. One spring I heard for the first time the call of a cuckoo, a particularly clever and resourceful bird, which seemed to underline the correctness of my southeast Lancashire, northeast Cheshire way of saying things. I'm pleased to report that according to both my aunts, Grandad not only took umbrage at the teacher's intervention, but duly backed me up. He evidently visited the school the very next day and delivered a learned homily to the offending party on the origins of the English language. He evidently stressed the cultural importance of preserving both local dialects and accents, in the face of the all-pervasive and ignorant received English onslaught on linguistic variety perpetrated by the radio in the form of the BBC Home Service. In doing so, he pointed out that the richness of the English language lay in the fact that it had evolved from a profusion of distinctive tongues, spoken by successive waves of migrants into the various regions of our land from the 4th century onwards, gradually displacing the resident Romano-British Celts of that time. If the governors of the BBC had been around at the dawn of English history, the language of William Shakespeare would no doubt have been fairly boring. Although, as I have said, I have no memory of these incidents, they obviously had their effect on me, for I successfully resisted the dumbing down of the language by the dinner-suited BBC announcers of the 1940s and 50s, and still pronounce my double O's in more or less the same way today, 64 years later, much to the amusement of many, and no doubt the frustration, and perhaps even the derision, of a few. So, coming up to my 5th birthday in 1949, and life was good. Auntie Dolly or Beattie used to read to me at bedtime. Grandad continued to take me tramping and to visit his old friends in the village, who regaled me with stories of the First World War, the suffragettes, the general strike, and the Depression. I had decent clothes on my back, leather shoes on my feet, and good nourishing food in my belly, the latter thanks to the local co-op, a profusion of small bakers, Beattie and Dolly's expert home cooking, and not least the continuation of wartime rationing, which ensured plentiful supplies of potatoes, healthy fat-free offal, and good, wholesome, unadulterated flour. Above all, I had stability, and knew that I was loved. I also had friends of my own age, one in particular, a girl who had a pet guinea pig, and whose name I cannot for the life of me remember, although I know she lived on the very short and inaptly named High Street, near the Rising Sun Junction on the other side of the A6, from where we lived. Then, one Sunday morning, whilst Dolly was preparing the customary lamb roast, a stranger appeared on our kitchen doorstep, and was duly ushered into the small back living room, where I was being told a story by Grandad, on whose knee I sat feeling particularly happy. Auntie Beattie, whose face was wreathed in smiles, ushered him in. He was a small man, with hair as black as coal, fast going bald on top, with a grin on his face that illuminated a room already bright with sunshine. "Malcolm, this is your dad," Beatty announced. "He's come to take you home."